like that. So the idea that it's the size of Jupiter is ridiculous, but I'll just go ahead and whatever, give it to him. And so let's say he knows somehow that it's the size of Jupiter, whatever. Even if it's the size of Jupiter, we'll just go with that and say that he believes that this thing is going to come between the Earth and, Mars and Jupiter. If it's that close, and it came at a regular interval, it's going to do more than, the asteroid belt and the planets are so stable, if it makes no sense if every 3,600 years an object came that close. The asteroid belt would not be stable. The asteroid belt is ridiculously stable. The planets are ridiculously stable and will continue to be so. They wouldn't be like this. We would be continually in flux if every 3,600 years something just barreled into our galaxy like that. We're not looking at the results of that. And you could just do models about that. But my point is not about that. My point is that the guy says that all this is happening, and the thing that he calls perturbations, how the only effects is, as far as Masters seems to suggest that we're going to get from this, is that a planet coming that close will mess with the sun somehow, a mechanism he fails to describe ever, which is unfortunate because it's like the crux of his everything that he says is about the sun. Somehow he's invented a mechanism in which this object coming this close does things to the sun, causes more coronal mass ejections, solar flares, solar heat, all these things. The sun goes crazy, and it's by virtue of the sun going crazy that it messes with the Earth and the other planets and causes earthquakes and causes all this stuff as a result of the sun doing it to us for the most part. Pole shifts and everything is because Planet X comes close to the sun, makes the sun do stuff to us. Are you with me? So he calls these perturbations. In this context, when you talk about perturbations, you talk about the gravitational effects that this Jupiter-sized object would have on the asteroid belt and the surrounding planets and everything else. But in light of any of that, which would absolutely crush his theory, he's got to come up with a new version of perturbations. His version is the idea that perturbations means the weather on Mars is getting different, and so essentially Mars, if you will, is being perturbed because the sun is getting hotter and it's making the polar ice caps melt. And I could get into a lot of the debates about whether that's actually happening on Mars or anywhere else or whatever, or I guess not the debate of whether it's happening, but what it's a result of, their local weather or solar heat is a whole other situation. But I don't want to go there because I don't really know a whole lot about it. I can debunk it a different way just as easily. The thing that really kills Marshall Masters' idea is solar cycle 24. We are in solar cycle 24 right now. Solar cycles are every 11 years. The sun basically goes up and down every 11 years, giving higher degrees of sunspots, coronal mass ejections, solar flares, and at the peak of a solar cycle, obviously it gives the highest number. And then, of course, it's got every 11 years, it's also got a low peak. So, and these things have been studied meticulously since like at least 100 years. Most of these graphs go back to like the 1880s. And you're thinking, how can we judge solar flares for 100 years? Surely we didn't have the ability to look at solar flares for 100 years. Well, the reason they're able to accurately know what this was doing for these hundreds of years was because you can easily see what's known as sunspots. Okay, it's just what it sounds like. That's spots on the sun. They appear in different places on the sun and different things like that. But if you look at a graph of, say, sunspots and coronal mass ejections and solar flares and solar heat all next to each other, it would be doing essentially the exact same thing. As sunspots go, so do coronal mass ejections, so do solar flares, so does solar heat. And it's so well known that just by counting the number of these stupid spots, you can actually tell all these other things too. So it's so widely agreed upon now that it's just included in these graphs. We have these going back to, as I said, the 1800s. Now, here's the crux of the matter. What happened was, in about 3 years ago, we started this solar cycle. And there were two groups of people that were making predictions about this solar cycle. To make a long story short, one was predicting that the sun had a long memory. Okay, I don't know exactly what they mean by that, but when you read about this, that's what they talk about it. One group believed that the sun had a short-term memory. Okay, whatever. Now, the two different camps were predicting two different things for the solar cycles. Like NASA was a part of the long memory camp, and they were predicting that this solar cycle was going to be the worst one in 400 years. Okay? They were predicting a 400-year huge solar cycle, the biggest ever, you know. And I guarantee you, Planet Xers and everybody else have been reading and fueling their fires with these articles from NASA, and which is not exactly the first time that they've fueled a planet or a 2012 theories. I think that there's something going on with NASA and that, but that's a whole other issue. So NASA says it's going to be the worst one in 400 years. And that's 3 years ago. That's when Marshall Masters was writing his book, The Planet X Forecast. Everything that he says is completely dependent upon right now in 2012, 2013. In order for Marshall Masters to be even slightly right, in order for him not to be a complete and total quack, he needs the sun to be going crazy right now. Because if it's not, then he's completely wrong. So, is the sun going crazy right now? Not only is the sun not going crazy right now, what happened was none of this panned out. Basically, the crowd that said it was going to be a low number won the day. Once you're about 3 years into it, it's almost a given exactly what it's going to do. But it almost doesn't even matter what it does from here on out, because we are so low right now that if you look at a graph of this, where we are right now is unbelievably low. I mean, we're going to be lower in our highest point. I mean, even if you give it the benefit of the doubt where it's going to be kind of high this year, it's still going to be the lowest in 100 years. We are so far below the average. It's not ridiculously below the average. I don't want you to say, "Oh, well, maybe it's causing the reverse." Well, no, it's just below average. It's not ridiculously below average or whatever, but it's below the average. And that you can see this in every graph, whether it's solar heat or coronal mass ejections or whatever. People are always saying, "Look at the solar flare; it's proof of this." There's always going to be solar flares, big ones, small ones, whatever. And if you're watching them consistently, and you say, "Wow, that was a big one today," yeah, but if you were watching it in one of these, big solar cycles, you would be having a much more exciting time. Yeah, there's solar flares all the time, and there's big ones, small ones, whatever. But there was a lot more and a lot different years. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, we're looking at nothing of what was supposed to happen. Now the camps, NASA included, it's a high solar maximum this year. Nobody does, and actually they learned a lot about, I've actually seen the presentations of them sort of admitting this. Okay, we learned a lot this time. We know now a little bit more how to predict this stuff and whatever. And they learned something really specific about this solar cycle, so they say, that's important. And that will keep them from making the same mistake that they made. I'm not sure it was a mistake, but whatever. So, to make a long story short, the camps that think this is going to be a big solar cycle are gone. And the data is as crystal clear as you can get. This is, if Planet X is supposed to be messing with the sun, and the sun's supposed to be melting the caps and stuff like Marshall Masters always says, look at all the planets warming up. If the planets are warming up, if the planets are doing all this stuff because of the sun, then the question I have to ask Mr. Masters is, by what mechanism are they warming up? Because total solar irradiance is way down. Like the heat of the sun is way, way, way down. Like it was so much higher in the, ridiculously much higher in the 2000s, 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, the 50s. Solar irradiance was easily double what it is right now. Okay? And so in sunspots and everything else. And if there's more coronal mass ejections in the last 50 years by half than there is right now, and there's more solar flares, at least half more than there is right now, and the sun was that much hotter, what secret way is the sun now doing all this stuff that supposedly Planet X is causing? Is it a mystery new way in which the sun is causing all these things to happen? Because it's certainly not because it's getting hotter. It's certainly not because it's got more solar flares or sunspots or anything. So I'm open. Tell me exactly how this is happening. Okay, so there's something. The Kuiper Belt Cliff is something that Masters says exists, and it does exist. It basically is. We talked about the Oort cloud, of course, which is kind of a dome, and then there's the Kuiper Belt Cliff, the Kuiper Belt is kind of flat, like the asteroid belt farther out than Pluto, and basically there's a big kind of what they call a cliff, a place where there isn't any rocks kind of in it. It's kind of like a gap where there aren't any object. People have proposed number of reasons for that. Masters says, of course, it's because of Planet X, but there's lots of problems with that.